Clinical trials and clinical researchers to conduct or do it have got a lot of challenges in our country. So we would like you to highlight about the challenges, what you think the clinicians face. And second point, what are the suggestions to overcome these challenges?
Yeah. The clinical trials for if you take up RCTs, for example, to do RCTs nowadays, the funding is required, a huge funding. And that is where we start having problem. We don't get funding from ICMR, which is equivalent to NIH in the US. When you go through the ICMR websites, you find fundings are being given for a lot of chronic diseases. Lot of funding in crores are given for tuberculosis, malaria, and all. And I didn't find any funding for acute care diseases. So I think that is the first thing, is the funding. And in the big private hospitals, corporate hospitals, they won't generate fund for this kind of RCTs. And nowadays, with the compensation clause that we have in India, that for any death in the RCTs, the patients have to be compensated very handsomely. So it's only the industry backed RCTs, that is the only way to go. So I think that is where the first investigator initiated randomized controlled trial is becoming very, very difficult. So people are landing up having an observational studies. Even in that, I think we have a strong point because of our numbers. If we have a, like for example, recently we published 1,000 patient sepsis data, and that was taken up in critical care journal very readily. So our numbers, and we took only 1 year to generate 1,000 patient sepsis and septic shock data by sepsis 3 criteria. And we recently did a Hermes trial on fluid responsiveness few years back. Within a year, we could generate 1,000 patients who were septic and receiving fluid boluses. So our number is our strength. And the bigger the numbers are, even a good observational study with a large number can produce a reasonable results. And that is where I think our strength would be in the coming future, rather than even in the world. People are getting away from RCTs a little bit. They say that, okay, they are not leading us to a definite conclusion. So why not generate a big data and do a robust analysis and then come to a conclusion on that? So that was one part, the funding part. The second is the ethical regulation, the ethical committee. Passing, RCTs and all through ethical committee becomes a very big problem. And even observational study, doing an informed consent almost becomes mandatory. And that is where sometimes, with the different languages involved and all, the clinicians find it very daunting. You have to have a clinical research team to do all this. It is not possible for a single physician or one or two people getting together to do a big observational study. So, again, to have a clinical research team, some funding is required. And that is where things don't move so much. In government hospitals, I think they have a better opportunity to do more research into critical care given the sort of supports they have. In private, unfortunately, because of the other logistic problems, doing a very big research on your own becomes very difficult. And that is where the collaborative network of ICUs that might help us to take forward. Each ICU puts in a little bit, and if we have a big network like we have in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and UK, that might lead us to a better research opportunity. And I think that is the future, to do a collaborative ICU network among India. There are steps have been taken towards that, but needs to be a more stronger. Over to you.
Perfectly answered, sir. I think the challenges, yes, but each challenge is an occasion to create, change the history and create more history. I think you clearly pointed about the importance of our strength, which is the numbers, and RCTs are, observational studies are equally as good as doing an RCT. That is the one thing which India can definitely concentrate upon. And hospitals, I think, like corporate social responsibility, the private hospitals definitely can pitch in by giving some sort of a funding for clinicians who is interested and doing some sort of a research activity should be rewarded in a due way. Thank you so much for the answer, sir.
I just wanted to pitch in this. I always ask that, like in government hospitals, the research is done because the promotion is based on how many papers you have
Yes,
published and all.
yes,
But in private sector, I have not seen that if somebody writes a research, whether he gets more increment that year. That part is not taken into account. And I think if our hospital administrators start doing that look, if you present a paper in an international congress, if you write a good paper, then this will be have a very big point in your appraisal.
yes.
And I think,
Appraisals has to be scrutinized well in the regard of research also.
and
Well
get
point,
the
sir.
research in the as a top priority, not just in a number. And I think that will definitely help our doctors to do more research.
Thank you, sir.
What do you